Welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Ryan Richards. I'm a residential loan officer and real estate investor based out of Massachusetts and Rhode Island. Today, I'm bringing back a repeat guest with Ben Carbone, and we talk all about where we are today with the projects we have going on and breaking down the concept of value add. So if you're someone who wants to learn more about finding great real estate opportunities, how to increase the value or the income that your property generates, or just learn more in general about some of the projects we have going on, then definitely keep an eye out for this episode. We also talk a lot about our upcoming mastermind. So some of the concepts we're going to be diving into and expanding on some of the different stages you go through as a real estate investor and how you can surround yourself with the right people to make those as seamless and easy as possible. So stay tuned to learn more about that and much more. Ben, welcome back to another episode.
Happy to be here.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
It's funny how fast things change, when you're out doing business and doing real estate. And I know from last time we talked, a lot of different things have happened in business and what you got going on real estate wise. So I'm pumped to jump into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also what we have going on and what we're offering, with the informed investor. So super excited to dive into that and kind of, peel back the curtain for people and show them what we do on a day-to-day and what goes through our mind, especially owning as many units as we do.
Absolutely. I'm excited. You have to stay till the end to hear more about that. It's going to be a good one.
Absolutely.
But today, I know we both have some construction going on, in our properties, some renovation. And I think a topic today that sometimes I don't think gets as much clarity as it should is like the concept of value add. So when you're looking at properties, what types of things do you look for to increase the value? And so obviously the projects we have going on now, because I feel like there's a lot of investors when they look at properties that miscategorize like value add as opposed to like repairs and capital expenditures. So I know you've got some projects going on currently. So I want to hear more about your process and what you've got going on with your additional unit you're putting together.
Yeah, sure.
We'll kind of dive through some of it.
Okay. Yeah. And, touching base on value add as, a commercial agent and someone that works with investors on a day-to-day basis, it's a blanket term right now for everyone in the market. Whenever you talk to an investor, or you talk to somebody, it's always, we want value add. We want value add. And okay, define that for me and what that means for you, because there's so many different subsets to what value add could be. Some people are like, oh, we need a full gut rehab for us to be in for a value add. It has to be at the 2% rule when we purchase so that we can, put money in and then be at the 1% once we add this value, or rents are significantly lower than where they should be, not on a market basis. And that's where they see a value add opportunity. For me, it's kind of a holistic approach as to the way that I evaluate a property on a value add basis. And the 4 unit that I'm adding a 5th unit to was purely a value add play when I purchased the property. And it wasn't something that initially I thought was going to happen right away, but I purchased this property 4 years ago for about $250,000.
You saw that potential.
Saw the potential. The town had previous approvals to add a 5th unit in the attic. And also they were granting the permission for me to build 6 more units ground up on the property. So that is generically what a value add would be, right? Is you have this base level of value at a property, and then there's opportunities to add more units, to add more space, to renovate units, to increase, your efficiencies. And that's where your value add is. So this value add opportunity falls directly in line with, okay, the price now of the property is, or what it's worth is $480,000. Just got my appraisal back today on the property for the refinance to take out a construction draw to add this 5th unit. And after it is completed, it's a narrative appraisal. So what that means is they're going to take this approach and they're going to create a story behind what's going to happen at the property, the improvements that are going to go on from taking it from 4 units to 5 units, right? That brings it from a residential property to a commercial property. It's usually purely based on income at that point. So the value after goes from $480,000 as a 4 unit to $660,000 as a 5 unit.
Right. And when you say, so like the narrative appraisal for someone who might not, understand that concept, they're doing that to be able to value your property today based on all of these improvements being done.
Correct.
which gives you then the equity to take out some construction financing from the bank. So they actually pay for the renovations based on what you're going to do, but haven't even done yet.
Absolutely.
Which is super cool.
Yeah. And, it's being able to leverage your equity that's already in the property, right? Typically, when you invest, you put about 25% down on a property. Here, it was just, natural progression of renovations at the property, increasing rents, but also the shift of the market over the last 4 years. It went from purchasing the property at $255,000 or so to now $480,000 on the value perspective without having to add another unit, just renovate and increase rents.
Right.
So, that's a tell-all sign as to where everything is moving and where you're able to leverage yourself. So now I'm not touching my own pocket. Which is huge, right? Then that's what we look for is
leverage.
Yeah, we want to hold as much cash as we can to ourselves. So I'm refinancing with my preferred lender, and they're giving a construction loan on top of it for about $125,000 for me to put an additional fifth unit in the building.
To build the unit.
Where I'm not even touching any of my own money, and I'm just going to draw based on that construction.
And it's money you're getting that's tax-free.
Yeah. Which is even more attractive.
Anytime you can say that, it's always a good thing.
Yeah. And I know that you're doing the same process at a 6-family where you have a value add opportunity, and it's a little different than mine.
Yeah, it's a little different. But, I think to segue into mine, I think what you said is super important about defining the type of value add you are looking for, because there's so many different types of value add. But oftentimes, I don't think people are able to clearly define like what types of value add you're looking for. So one, that could just get deals thrown your way that you don't really want to be looking at.
Yep.
And two, you could get into a deal that's really outside of your scope. So it's like matching the type of value add to your skill set and resources as an investor. Like that's really the ultimate pairing versus just saying, I'm looking for a property of value add. Like, what does that really mean?
Yeah. Define it for it.
Define it. Are you looking for opportunities to add another unit? Are you looking for zoning value add? Is there a potential to make that into a 6 unit or build an additional parcel, maybe subdivide the land? That's a different type of value add than operational value add. That's my favorite type of value add.
Absolutely.
A property's just run inefficiently. It doesn't require any capital to improve, but it requires systems and management. And that's a better value add than saying, I'm just looking for value add. And get more specific with it. I think that's important. So for my property, going through quite a bit of renovations, and some of it actually falls almost outside of value add in the sense that it's improving the property, but it's not really increasing the value. So that's an important delineation to make too when you're like looking at these deals. I think for people who are thinking, all right, yeah, I'm open to a renovation project. Ben's building a 5th unit. That's really cool. I want to do that. But making sure you can figure out, one, if it's feasible, and then two, if it makes sense for your business plan. So for example, 6-family that purchased was in need of quite a bit of renovation, a lot of which fell into the value add category. So that would be things like repairing and renovating the garage stalls on the property so that I can increase the income, add some value to the property.
Absolutely.
Also renovating some units on the interior. So making some things nicer, replacing tenants with new tenants at higher rents. That's adding some value and creating better aesthetics, better build quality. That all adds value. Doing some deck work, so I had to repair 2 3-story decks, which is unfortunately not cheap to do. And that's arguably, and I actually go back and forth on that, because is that value add? I wouldn't say it's not, but I wouldn't say it is.
I think that you could almost put a placeholder on it where it would be value add in the sense of comfort and the attractiveness that you bring to a property for your tenants, right? Which then results in better tenants, happier tenants who will pay on time, and they won't have, an issue per se with you increasing their rents to where they should be based on the renovations you made.
I agree. Yeah, because they see that you're making it a better place to live.
Yeah.
So I do think it is in that sense, like a lot like siding. Like, does siding really impact the value of your property? Not from an income perspective, but maybe intangibly, like you're saying.
Yeah.
Tenants see a nicer property. You might get a better tenant because it looks nicer. But like dollar for dollar, renovating a unit is much more impactful than replacing this 3-story deck that I just had to do. But
definitely, yeah.
Overall, like when I was evaluating the deal, those are some of the things I looked for, is like, what's the true value add play here? How much am I going to spend? And how much more income am I going to generate from these renovations? So I feel like there's like 2 ways to look at value add. There's obviously multiple, but I think 2 big ones. And it's like, what are you doing in renovations and how much more income will you get? And then what are you doing in renovations and how much more equity will you get?
Absolutely.
So like the deck, siding, more of an equity play. than like renovating a unit, renovating garage spaces.
Definitely. And, the equity plays, especially where we are with our portfolios, we're both very young. So, we're likely going to hold these properties for north of 10, 15 years. So when you do increases of capital expenditures in that way, you're looking at a long-term play. It's not, hey, I'm going to put, lipstick on a pig for the next 3 years and then sell the property. No, you're going to hold this as an asset for 10, 15, 20, 25 years. And you doing that upfront work is just going to give you increased value, minimize and mitigate headaches from tenants and maybe insurance issues, right?
Right.
And that it is really efficiencies and systems at that point.
Yeah, the efficiencies piece, 100%. Like when you look at it from that perspective, I agree. I think for someone who's like kind of going back and forth on like what is value add, it's like either look at the equity, the income, or the efficiencies. But I think sometimes people, when they say value add, like they bulk in some capital expenditures that might make or break a deal, and they categorize it wrong in their head. So if, like, for example, like the systems, like if you have to put a new roof on the property, but the price doesn't reflect the fact that there's not a new roof, and you go and install a new roof, like that doesn't really increase the value of the property because you got it at a price that doesn't really reflect that.
Right.
And the roof doesn't make the property better per se. I mean, every property should have a roof. It's like one of those things that, if you have a foundation problem, that's not, yes, you're improving the property, but it's like, it's not the same as if you're replacing even heating systems. I think falls in that back and forth category.
Yours does.
Because it checks off the box for efficiency. You might save, month over month on your heating costs, which tenants like. So it does have that, double-edged benefit.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, something else to touch on with that fact is when we speak about value add, you have to look at your buy box and where you are in your progressive timeline investing, right? So we spoke before this and you said, would you be adding a fifth unit to your property 4 years ago as soon as I purchased that property? No, because I didn't have the experience. I didn't have the knowledge. I didn't have the equity in the property. And also I didn't have the team that I've built around me. So being in the market for the last 4 to 5 years, both as an agent and an investor, you have this culmination of things that you're able to use as assets. So a team, your managerial processes, your relationships with banks, and you're also longer timing in the market. So you have more equity maybe to leverage, which is a huge key. And also for people to start, looking at on a perspective basis where if you're just coming into the game and you're going to start investing, maybe your value add isn't what you would perceive it to be if you had longer time in the market.
That's a really good point. No, and we were talking about that earlier. And I think that it's so true to like really hone in on like what you say, your buy box, not only from the standpoint of like capitalizing on opportunities, but getting opportunities sent your way and being able to like confidently execute them.
Absolutely.
But there still is value in what you're saying. If you have a potential in the property, it can be a longer term thing, but then the property still has to make sense today. So I think sometimes like when people don't understand that, they're like, oh, this property has the potential to be developed into, I don't know, say 8 units. So they buy it. But realistically, within their path of progression, like that's not a realistic play they're going to make for 10 years.
Right.
And the property in the meantime doesn't really perform. So like that might be a deal that, yeah, there's value there, but maybe not for like your skill set. So if the property can make sense, like if without the value add based on the timeline you expect to do it in, I think like that's an important thing to keep in mind.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that's also what I'm excited about for the informed investor is we've had this time in the market and as investors with mentors around us who have elevated us and to increase our perspective as the way that we look at things. We're going to provide that for people that are involved in this mastermind that we're launching because 4 years ago, I didn't have the people and the assets that I have now to give me guidance as to what would be my best plan, and that's a continued thing. And I talked about this the other day when I was at Nichols, speaking to sophomores and juniors, is your biggest thing in life is the ability to continue to ask questions and not be afraid to ask questions. And those questions could be to people who are investors that have 100 units that have been in the market in the game for 30 years. When I was going to add this 5th unit to my property, I called someone who is very well established in the Northeastern Connecticut area and asked his perspective on it. And he said, I think that if you weren't to do this, it would be a disservice to yourself, your future, and your portfolio. You should make this property a staple to your portfolio and continue to build around it and build on it. So, having those resources are huge. And that's
Love that.
where the informed investor comes in for all these people that are going to join. And then what we're going to provide for them is resources that we wish we had when they were starting out.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And then I'm super excited to be that, person for someone to give that perspective but really like show them, spend time with them. Like that's the difference between what we're doing and I think what a lot of other resources like might be out there offer. Like people always say, oh, go to Bigger Pockets. Bigger Pockets is great.
Absolutely.
But you're getting, I always like to say like shotgun information. Yeah. You ask a question like, boom, here you go. And then you look back and you have 15 holes in the wall, but you can't paint the picture. So like we want to be like that resource. We're with you a couple hours a week for an entire quarter. And we have thought it out. So we're going to provide, the course value of a step-by-step process, which I think is really cool because it's a hybrid between a mastermind and a course. Because a true mastermind, I feel like everyone in the room is in the same, same place, similar place. And it's really roundtable discussions, which we are doing.
Yeah.
But I think the cool component is like we did build in a portion of like set structure. So people know what they're getting out of it from day one. And we're going to ultimately change the content based on what people want, like a mastermind. So I think it's a really cool hybrid that we have together.
Yeah, definitely. I think, all the time that we spent planning this and putting it together has really shown as to the response that we've had from the members that we currently have signed up and also people that are just interested in general, right? Is they say, we've been looking for something of value, just as we said that right now we're looking for a mastermind or some type of course that can provide us value. And we're not seeing that in the marketplace that we're in. So being able to build that and give it to people while also being involved in it heavily, I think is just awesome.
I do too. I think it's cool that we created it from a place of need in a sense.
Yeah.
We're like, we're looking around, we're like, there's not really anything out here. And I wish I had something like this when I first started because like you're saying, that acceleration factor, it's just multiplied exponentially when you can get the answers from the source. So it's like taking a test with Google. Like you can pass any school test if you have Google in front of you. So it's the same type of concept. So I'm excited to get into that. And I think a lot of people that I've talked to, like who are in the mastermind already signed up, like they're excited to learn the actual like meat and potatoes of like investing. So like even when we're talking about your fifth unit and you're like, I learned that the town had plans of a fifth unit approval. Someone might be like, well, how did you know that? That's what we're talking about in the mastermind. So like that, that type of stuff of like, how do you actually figure that stuff out? You took out a construction loan. I took out a construction loan. I used the bank's money to renovate the property to make it worth more, to make me more income. That sounds pretty cool. How do you do that? This is what we're going to talk about in the mastermind.
Absolutely.
So it's like, those types of things, like we're going to take you to the source. And like, that's something you can't get anywhere, which I'm pumped to be a part of it.
Yeah, no, it's exciting. We're giving people a pathway and for them to join us on that journey is so incredibly cool. And, I look at the people that I have and had in my life that have impacted me on my journey investing in real estate and, how I'm still able to bounce ideas off them, get advice, get opinions, and just, chalk it up and shoot it around and see, okay, what does the next 5 to 10 years look like based on their progression scale? These people with 300 units, okay, I'm at 36. How do I get to 300 units?
Right.
And what does that have to look like on a systems basis? And all the meat and potatoes that they have that they can give me in order for me to understand where I need to go. Because for these people that are in our mastermind, they're maybe at 0 units, maybe they have their first or second property and we have multiple. So we're going to give them that guideline as to, hey, from 0 or 2 buildings all the way to 5, 6, 10, and what that looks like in between.
Which I feel like that's such a critical launching point. Like from 0 to 1 is obviously a launching point.
Yep.
But then to go from 1 to like 5 is sometimes like an insurmountable task for people because there's a lot of steps that have to happen.
Absolutely.
And if you don't do it in the right order and you don't have an incredible cash injection, like it can be really difficult. So like those first 2 steps, 3 steps you make are so important. And we obviously found our way through it. So now we can look in the rearview mirror and be like, hey, don't take that left, take this right.
Yeah.
You could go left, but then you're going to have to go right again. So I would just go right first.
So, and we have stories that go along with it, right? On decisions that we made that, we learned very quickly from.
100%.
Yeah.
But I was actually thinking of doing a October Halloween, story session where I'm sure we can go back and forth for days. But it's like, rather than figure out like stumble down the hill and get up. It's like you could go around the hill, and that's kind of what we're trying to provide.
Yeah.
And I know it'll be something hopefully that goes on, for a lifetime. Like this becomes a mastermind that we do once a year, same type of group. We have our group chat that extends, into the future for forever. And that becomes like that source of community. If you need a question answered, if you want to bounce an idea off someone, or, hey, I found this deal, it's a little too big for me. Anyone else want to be a part of it? Maybe there's partnership opportunities. So we want to make it like that center of attention for all your real estate questions. And I think for some people too, like a lot of real estate investors, when they first start, you don't have that real estate rock where you're going to meetups, like you're going online, but then at the end of the day, like real estate is something you have to seek versus if you have like some steady stream of real estate conversation, I think that just helps push you and motivate you that much further.
Without a doubt.
Which like if obviously we're in the career field, but imagine if you were, like if you just went to a W-2 job and you went to go work, I don't know, say whatever, you work at Starbucks, like your brain goes on and off like from different tasks. So to have like one group chat you can go back to at the end of the day, or like one friend conversation you can call and say, hey, like what was going on in real estate today? I was thinking about this while I was at work. Like to pick that conversation back up, I think is a really cool thing to offer.
And then to refocus yourself. And, I look back on my experience when I bought my first property and it kind of felt like I was on my own island.
That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
And the people that I was surrounded with, yes, they were highly successful. We were entrepreneurs. We were doing our thing, but they didn't understand, the ins and the outs of real estate, and they didn't really care to learn. So my day-to-day interaction was not anything involved with real estate. And I had this longing for it, and to build that sense of community and everything. And once I got licensed in real estate and started buying more property and going to investor meetups and creating these investor dinners and, our relationship too, we talk basically every single day about opportunities, and anything that we can come together with has significantly propelled me into this totally different stratosphere of a career and also personal portfolio and what I think about on a day-to-day basis. So I don't feel like on an island anymore. You have so many webs and resources around us that we can reach out to at any single time during the day.
That's what it's all about. Because you go so much farther, together than on an island. So it's really nice when you break out of that sphere. And then I think too, like what you're talking about, like your business evolves. And it's cool to be alongside other investors, other people, like yourself, when we're talking. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, the conversation today is just so much different than the conversation was 3 months ago because of how much we're consistently committing to being the best at what we're doing and finding more deals, having conversations, like being ingrained in the community. Like I can already picture in my head 6 months from now, I have no idea what we're going to talk about because I have no idea what's going to be going on in our lives,
right?
Which I think is really cool because being alongside of people who are building real estate businesses or just businesses in general, you are able to collaborate on like real time hitches in your business because you're probably going through it at the same point or something I stumbled upon, you might have stumbled upon like a couple months ahead or vice versa. So it's like, you're in the race together, which I think is really cool, especially when it comes to like going to scale, which is something we're going to talk about in the mastermind. I think how to build a foundation to be efficient. And I know you self-manage 36 units, which to me is insane.
There's some wild days.
There's some wild days, yes, for sure.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that like you've honed in on that have helped you systematize? Like I know you use some software. What are some things you're looking at in your business now?
Yeah. So it's really just becoming organized and very, very lean and efficient as to how I operate, my properties. And what I mean by that is, typically we have all these thoughts and things that run through our head on a day-to-day basis. And that could be, okay, what tenants are in this building? What are they paying? What is security deposit? I remember when I had 2 properties, I didn't really have anything on paper and like Excel sheets or even a system that I was using. And I felt all over the place. I felt scattered, especially when it came time to collect rents. So the big thing was putting everything and organizing everything in sheets on a property management software that is absolutely a lifesaver because I couldn't imagine running around and collecting rent or going to my mailbox, 3 times a week and to see what's in there. So now, it's one comprehensive software where they can pay their rent, they can get their own renter's insurance, people can apply for apartments, they could do a background and credit check right through there. And then also they can have maintenance requests that come in that I can see and then push out to my team. So, having those systems and those processes in place. And then even, I look at, okay, like acquiring a new property. There's a system that we talked about on our call with the mastermind group as to how we approach buying a property and what that looks like in the first 48 hours or the first week.
Mm-hmm.
And that's having a welcome letter already written, introducing yourself, how you collect rent, the rules of the property, what may stay the same based on the previous owner, what might change, what types of systems that you have in place for all your properties that you're going to put on to this property, and then giving that to the tenants and making that introduction. That's a huge step.
100%.
A massive step.
That sets the expectation.
Yeah.
Right off the bat, are you going to be professional, or are you going to run things like the last landlord and let things, come by the wayside? And that reflects on you.
It does.
So that's a really, crucial step.
Yeah.
And it comes from having those systems in place, which I'm excited to dive into systems, more too with the mastermind group, because it's not something like you think about early on. Like you were saying, like your first property or two, you just kind of figure it out.
Yeah.
You're in that phase where you're like, I'll figure it out, but you don't have a system. And it's like, once you get the system, the sigh of relief is there that, wow, I was doing things so inefficiently.
Absolutely.
But if you could have that done up front by just talking to the right people and, being in a space like we're creating, you can just jumpstart the whole process and forego all the extra work you don't have to do, which I think is such a motivating factor. Because some people, I feel like when it comes to like a course or a mastermind or even like going to a real estate meetup, they're like, well, I don't own any property. Let me buy my first one first. It's like, no, that's the exact reason why you should go to this place.
Yes. Yeah.
Because we're going to take you there. So it's like, get in the car, we're going somewhere.
Right.
So,
yeah. And put your seatbelt on and turn on the radio, because that's what we're looking to do, is give you, something up front that you can walk into your first property with, rather than, hey, I'm closing my first property next week. What are the things that I need? And then you're scrambling, you're trying to figure it out. And at that time, it might be, you still have enough time, but it might be too late for you to be systematically organized. And I know for you with your portfolio and just in business in general, you're incredibly organized and you've created systems, and, it's evolving and creating more systems and becoming more efficient and kind of taking yourself out of the day-to-day tasks that are involved.
100%. And that 100%. And that does, like you said, it evolves over time too. Like you're always going to be like fine tuning and making things better. But like, as you say that too, it reminds me, like looking back, I started thinking while you were talking, I'm like, what would I have done different? Like systems that I missed. And there's so many things. Yeah. Like there's so many things that I look back now, and like if I had some sort of direction or like someone who could actually have shown me, here's the best way to do, X, Y, or Z, I would definitely have done a few things differently. Because I see it all the time with my clients too. Like people make decisions and then ask the question after. It's like, oh, you should, I told you not to do X, Y, and Z, or I would have told you not to do that. And we could have been in a totally different direction. I moved out of my 3-family and I'm collecting the rent. I want to buy another property. Why'd you do that?
Right.
You could have taken out an equity line of credit. Well, it was an owner occupied property. Get more equity. Now you live rent free at your parents' house. Fannie Mae doesn't let us use rental income on the new property without a housing expense. So you just double dipped by making one move that if you had the right person in your corner, you could have used that as an excellent opportunity. It's like you missed that trampoline,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a big piece of it. And I look back to on something that became incredibly, important for me was Mike Burns, obviously, who is a mentor and also just an incredible investor. When I was starting to really beef up my portfolio, you have to get better at understanding and vetting tenants and what that looks like. Because if you make a wrong decision, just because you think, oh, on paper they look good, yeah, they're a nice person, and you get them in, and then in 3 months they stop paying rent, you have a whole eviction on your plate.
Yeah.
You're costing yourself money, you're costing yourself stress, and overall, it's probably not going to end too great,
right,
in the long run. So, having somebody that was able to give me guidance as to this is what you should look for, this is what you should, vet them out and have them send you, this is the system that I use, really propelled me into making smart decisions. And now I can say, knock on every single piece of wood here,
100%.
that all my tenants are great. I have some exceptions,
sure,
just with one of the anomaly properties that I own, but
they're probably inherited too.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's another thing.
Exactly.
But every single tenant that I've put in place over the last 2 years, I haven't had an issue with at all. They all pay on time. They're great. They notify me if anything goes wrong, because now that I've brought them in, I'm able to set that expectation up front.
Right.
Right. And that's the big thing is
How things are going to operate.
this is how I operate. This is what I need to know. This is what you need to know. And this is how it's going to go from here on out.
Yeah. No, and you would have, either way, like even if you didn't call Mike, you would have figured it out. But you would have probably figured it out the hard way. And it's like, why do things the hard way when you can surround yourself with people who show you the easy way?
Right. And these curls, these nice curls, they probably would have been falling out of my head.
You'd have a few grains.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's such a big piece. I think people, when it comes to the tenant piece, they miss on it for some reason or another. They just feel like it's, let me get the quick money. Let me get someone in there who pays top dollar, but it's having the right direction on that is super important.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
Yeah. So Ben, it's been a pleasure having you on today as always. Sure, we could, sit here and talk real estate for till the sun goes down. But
Of course.
for those who are interested in learning more about the mastermind, how would they get in touch with you? And then I can certainly share how they'd get in touch with us. But as I do that, just want to share some details on the mastermind for those who are interested. The mastermind, we're trying to keep it super dynamic.
Yes.
So we had 10 slots open originally, and we only have 2 left. So it's important, if you're interested, just reach out to us. We're happy to have the conversation, and we can show you some more details. We have, of course, full information packet, information videos. We have webinars you can watch about what we're going to talk about. But how would someone get in touch with you if they want to talk to you specifically?
Yeah. So I think the big thing, just to, get your understanding and grasp around what we're going to be offering, is to follow me on social media, Ben Carbone on Instagram, and then that'll link you to our page directly, which is the Informed Investor, which you can also find Ryan on Instagram too. And he'll plug his handle for you guys. But, that's just going to give you an inside view as to what we do on a day-to-day basis and what we talk about, because I am always involved in my properties and thinking about investments for my clients or myself and projecting out what I'm going to be doing in the coming days, coming months to increase the value of my portfolio and the strategies that go behind that, on an efficiency basis, on a system basis, and strategy that is involved. So, just reach out, DM me, find me on Facebook too, whatever it may be. But I think that's just the best, way to get in touch.
No, that's the same here. You can DM me on Instagram, but definitely, which is at Finance with Team Richards. But definitely, even if you're not interested in the mastermind, which I'm sorry for you, but if you're not, you should definitely check out the Informed Investor Instagram page, because if you liked any of the stuff we talked about today, that page is our forum to do that. So Ben and I post on there very regularly, almost every day, as far as content geared specifically to real estate investors. So we try to give you some of those tactical nuggets that we were talking about, show you behind the curtain of real estate investing. So definitely check us out, the Informed Investor, our personal pages. If you like real estate, you want to learn more about it, definitely check us out, and we'll be sure to bring some value to you.
Yeah. Hope that you guys join. We start January 1st of 2025. So we'll be running through Q1, 3 months, weekly calls, the whole 9, some in-person meetups, and just a close connectivity and community for real estate investors that are looking to start the journey in their portfolio or, increase the size of their portfolio.
100%. Can't wait to get it going.
Yeah, let's do it.